Hi everyone, welcome back to the Hormones in Harmony podcast. I've got a guest on today to talk all about Chinese medicine, hormone health, hormonal birth control, and acupuncture. Her name is Caitria Thiele. She is a licensed acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioner and the founder of Connected Healing. She works with patients in person and in her clinic in southern Wisconsin and across the globe online through virtual one-on-one consults and group programs. She specializes in helping women who have tried everything to heal their hormones and balance their cycles, which is something that I like to do as well. So it sounds like we're going to get on pretty well today. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you specialize in a ton of different things and have many interests and passions. So we're going to cover a few of them today. But to start off with, could you tell us a bit about your story and your journey into more of this like holistic, natural world? Did you have a personal health issue or have you always been interested in some of these things?
Sure. So I grew up in a family that was always a little bit more geared towards natural health and wellness. Like I started going to the chiropractor when I was 10, and I'm the oldest of four, and I thankfully didn't have a ton of health issues, but some of my younger siblings did. So through the years, my mom specifically did a lot of research and learned a lot about, you know, eating differently, and it kind of started from there with her research trying to figure out how she could help my siblings, and then of course we all benefited from that. So that's kind of where it started, and I actually thought that I wanted to be a chiropractor for a lot of years when I was growing up, and then I realized that I would need to go to Western medical school in order to do that, and that just wasn't going to be a good fit for me. It just didn't feel in alignment with my beliefs and what I felt to be true from a whole health perspective. So I went into college not knowing what I wanted to do. And then my freshman year of college, kind of the middle of the year, I had what I call a divine intervention Google search moment where I don't even know what I was looking for on Google, but I ended up coming across an acupuncture school that was about a half hour from where I grew up. And next time I was home on break from school, I toured it, and I just immediately, like deep in my soul, knew this is the thing I'm supposed to do. And that's that's really where it started. It was just so clear and simple. So my personal journey with acupuncture kind of evolved. It was interesting timing that I was going through some health issues as I started acupuncture school. So I got to one of my professors told me in the first few weeks of school, she said, "You are in two master's programs at once. You're in the one, healing yourself and dealing with what you've got going on personally, and then the actual academic master's program. So you've got your plate full, but I know you can do this." And I actually wouldn't have had it any other way, because to experience firsthand how the medicine works as you're learning it in real time, I think was overwhelming in that time, but it was such a gift, looking back. I think it gave me just such a cool perspective on the medicine.
I can totally relate with your story as well, because a similar thing happened to me. I was, Googling away. I knew that I always wanted to be in the health industry, but it started off more as like social work and nursing. And then I was like, no, it's not really for me. It's not what I want to do. I've always loved food. And then I went to see a nutritionist, but I was Googling like nutrition schools and things. There was one 30 minutes from where I live. The open day was the very next day when I was already heading there anyway. I was already in the city and it was open. It was like the open day and enrollment day. So I went along and I just knew intuitively as well that it was meant to be. So everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
And learning, healing myself whilst learning. Some people were just on the course to heal themselves, but once you know what you do, you really want to just spread the word and help others. But what are some of the main symptoms or conditions that acupuncture can help with?
It's really a systemic medicine. So for those who might not be familiar, it's really just a different Chinese medicine is really just a different way to look at the body as a whole. So I would say there are a few things that I wouldn't seek out Chinese medicine treatment for. Like if I break my arm, I'm still probably going to go get the bone set and get a cast on and those kinds of things. But I would say Chinese medicine really shines in anything that is chronic, that Western medicine is having trouble figuring out, that you're having symptoms that are kind of leaving you falling through the cracks in terms of Western medicine. But that could be anything from a long-term pain condition to a digestive issue, hormone imbalance and, the symptoms that come as a result of that, fertility issues, mental health, really, I think it's because it's such a systemic medicine, you can heal multiple body systems at once and in conjunction with each other, which is the way that the body is really meant to be addressed anyway.
And what is the science behind it? Like, what are those little, I'm sure people have seen the little needles, and it looks very scary, but it's
Yeah.
honestly not at all. And it's not painful or anything like that.
Right.
But what's the science behind it? Like, what are those needles actually doing?
Sure. So from a Chinese medicine, I'll kind of go through it from my Chinese medicine answer and then my Western medicine answer, and then that kind of gives people a really clear perspective. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, the body is like one big circuit of energy, and there are sort of offshoots of energetic pathways that run through the body that help your body to function optimally. And some of them are in charge of digestion, some of them are in charge of, your pain responses. They're in charge of all different things. And in Western medicine, that would be likened to the nervous system. So when things are flowing smoothly, when that circuit of energy is running without interruption, without blockage, without imbalance, the body is free from disease. But that's almost always not the case because of various lifestyle factors and just being a human in society. The body is, dynamic and things are always changing. And so when there is a blockage or a disturbance in the flow of energy within the body, that will over time manifest itself as different physical symptoms. So acupuncture comes in and uses specific points along those energy pathways to sort of regulate and rebalance the flow of energy so that the body can be returned to its optimal function, because in a perfect world, the body should be able to heal itself. So we just kind of help it to get to a place where it can actually do that job and do it better than it might be able to do on its own. And from a Western medicine perspective, acupuncture does things like reduce inflammation, increase organ function, balance and regulate the nervous system. A lot of us spend way too much time in fight or flight response because we are chronically under stress, as our brain would perceive it. And when we're in that fight or flight mode, we can't digest our food as well. We can't sleep as well. Our body can't heal itself as well. So even just the simple shift of helping to switch from that stress response to more of a place where the body can heal itself more effectively is so major for the healing of all kinds of things.
And obviously it's effective just on its own. People go for acupuncture weekly or maybe more often than that in the initial stages. But is it even more beneficial if people also change the diet and take supplements and do other things? Or can you get the results basically just doing acupuncture alone?
I am a fan of using as many modalities and making your healing plan as comprehensive as possible. So I think that looks a little bit different for everybody. Everybody's got a different amount of bandwidth that they can devote to their healing at any given time, and everyone's body responds differently to various stimulus, whether that be changes in food, acupuncture treatment, herbs. So on a case-by-case basis, I evaluate that with my patients and, kind of decide what's going to get us over the therapeutic threshold in each specific situation. But in general, definitely anything that you can do to have a more comprehensive approach so that you're really integrating your healing into your lifestyle rather than just, I go to acupuncture once a week and then I kind of just don't really think about my body other than that. The more that you can be in conversation with your body and in response to your body's needs on a daily and even hourly sometimes basis, the better. So that's what I try to encourage my patients to do. And like I said, everyone has a different bandwidth for that. So some people are more able and ready to take that on in a deeper way. And for some people, it's just that first step. It's that introduction, which is no less important.
I mean, yeah, if someone's in chronic pain, can't get out of bed or hardly move, they aren't going to be in the kitchen, like meal prepping and all of this stuff. So yeah, maybe starting off just with acupuncture, and then as they start to feel better, maybe they'll be motivated to go and exercise and eat healthier.
Exactly.
And yeah, I did initially start off working alongside an acupuncturist doing the nutrition. side of things. He specialized in fertility and hormonal health, and he was getting amazing results just with him alone, just the acupuncture practice. But when we added in the nutrition side of things and maybe just the baseline supplements, they were getting even better results. So yeah, independent to the person, but I mean, we get so many insults thrown at us these days with environmental toxins and GMOs and all of that. We want to just do the best that we can.
Absolutely.
When we can. What about acupressure? How is that different?
So acupressure, basically there are many different ways that you can stimulate an acupuncture point. So the goal of stimulating an acupuncture point is just to achieve a therapeutic effect. And you can do that with an acupuncture needle. You can do that with simple pressure with a thumb and finger. You can do that with magnets. You can do it with, electrostim. There's lots of different tools that can help you get to that place of achieving a therapeutic result. So acupressure is just as it sounds. It's the application of pressure to an acupuncture point to stimulate it for whatever effect the desired effect is.
And is that something that your clients or patients would do between sessions?
Yes, I'll often incorporate that in. Like, for example, I work with a lot of women's health and fertility, and often as a result of that, pregnancy. And with pregnancy, a lot of times comes some morning sickness. So there's a point that's located 3 finger breadths from the wrist crease on the center of the inside of the arm. That's really wonderful for nausea of all kinds, but specifically for morning sickness. So I will often teach my pregnant patients where that point is, so that when the time comes that they're, having those problems in real time, they can't always be seeing me every day, right? So when they have that, they have a tool then that they can utilize in their own time. And it's something that's so accessible for anybody at any time. You always are where your body is, and you always have a hand that you can be using. So, driving to work, or sitting in the middle of a Zoom meeting in your day, or wherever you find yourself, you can always utilize acupressure, which I think is what makes it so fabulous.
And is this also what the emotional freedom technique kind of draws from? I don't know if you've heard EFT tapping. Is that on the acupressure points?
It is, yeah. There are specific points that are used. Actually, when I first learned about it, I was watching a YouTube video of someone, doing an EFT protocol. I was like, wait a minute, I know those points. So yeah, it's those same points. And some of the points that are used are ones that are recognized from a Chinese medicine perspective as being incredibly powerful points for moving energy and moving, emotional energy in particular. So that's why they're super effective for that.
Yeah, I mean, the one on the wrist is a little bit more subtle than the head tapping. You look like a bit of a crazy person if you were to do that in the middle of the city centre.
Yes.
But yeah, that one, if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, you can Google EFT, emotional freedom technique. That's often used to relieve anxiety and trauma and energy blocks. But then there are specific acupressure points for headaches and migraines and all sorts of things. So you could learn that from a practitioner. And I'm guessing as part of your acupuncture studies, did you learn TCM, Chinese medicine, alongside of that, or did you do additional studying afterwards?
It was all sort of rolled into one. So it started out, and this is the part that's so important. The finding and utilizing of acupuncture points really isn't the hard part. I mean, you could tell, like I said, I can just instruct someone in a few minutes to find an acupressure point and stimulate that. But the real value of the medicine is understanding the interplay between the organ systems within the body, so that you can then choose the right points. So the foundation of my training is in, the Chinese medicine perspective on how the body operates in relation to itself and in relation to its environment. And that is so crucial.
And I have had another episode with, I don't know if you know her, Kymberly Kelly, episode number 58. She does, I think, similar to what you do. So if after listening to this, you want to learn more about acupuncture, Chinese medicine, then definitely tune into that one. I'll link it in the show notes. But can you give your overview of the 5 elements and how they kind of interact with each other, in case anyone hasn't listened to that episode?
Sure. So five element theory is it's so cool. It is this idea that there are five elements that exist in all living things, in the environment, in our own human bodies, and in everything that exists around us, that govern our behavior, our health, our relationships. So it's this lens that you can look through uh, to understand not only health, but also the like what's going on in the world around you, and even relationships, which is so cool. I work with uh, a lot of parents and children, and a lot of times we will talk in terms of the five elements. What is the relationship between parent and child, and where can things be adjusted so that we can harmonize the relationship. So the five elements are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And there are organ systems that correspond to each of those elements. And there are, foods and sounds and seasons and all kinds of things that correspond to each of those organ systems. So it's when you can understand that, you can integrate the sort of therapeutic nature of nature into your lifestyle in a really beautiful and comprehensive way.
And is it similar to Ayurveda, where we're individually just more prone to be out of balance in one area, like genetically, or in terms of the doshas? Like for me in Ayurveda, I tend to be more of a pitta, so I'm prone to getting kind of like acne and reflux type symptoms and inflammation, whereas there's other people who have a lot of issues with digestion and maybe feeling cold all the time and thyroid issues. Is that similar, or can we just be thrown out of whack in any way?
It's totally similar to that. That is, like I said, it's this lens that you can look through to understand your body in a new way. So when you know that you are like your dominant element might be earth, and that's how that's where a lot of symptoms might show up for you. So like an earth type person might experience digestive issues, they might experience issues with their energy levels, they might experience, and it's this really cool way to understand and say, okay, because this is my nature, because I have this sort of earth dominant um you know body type, or internal compass. I know now that I need to support that element specifically as I go through life, so that I don't develop some of these health issues that would happen to an earth element dominant person.
Do they have like opposing elements? So would
Yes,
like fire or something, eating more like warming, fiery foods help?
absolutely. So there's
I've seen the
a
charts. There's some good
yes,
charts, isn't there, on Google?
absolutely. Yeah, it's called the five element star, and there's a mother child relationship where each element is nourished, and uh, it's sort of a system of checks and balances where they keep each other in check. So um, wood nourishes fire, fire nourishes earth, et cetera, et cetera. But then if earth becomes deficient, or is out of balance, that will affect all the other organ systems as well. So absolutely, you can use the medicine of the other organ systems to help bring another into balance.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. And I think your approach as well with hormone health, even though we say that we specialize in hormones and periods and fertility, that's really like the tip of the iceberg. We want to
Right.
look underneath, like supporting the gut health first and the liver detox and the nutrient levels. So that kind of feeding into each other, not just focusing on the problem.
Right.
Indirectly, you will be doing that, but just fixing the body as a whole.
Absolutely.
And speaking of hormones, what is the TCM or Chinese medicine view of hormone imbalances? Like, what is going on internally?
So like you just said, it's really layered, and it's that way because the body is this complex system of organ systems that are all in this sort of conversation of checks and balances with each other all the time. So there are, from a Chinese medicine perspective, we're often looking at the kidney organ system, which is the foundation of our vital life force energy and governs a lot of our reproductive function and hormones. And then oftentimes we're also looking at the liver, which is in charge of moving the energy and blood throughout the entire body, and it responds really negatively to stress in that it becomes stagnant and overburdened. And stress as a category, stress can look different for every individual, but so there we see a lot of issues in terms of hormone health. We see a lot of PMS type symptoms and things like that coming up. And then we also look to the spleen, which governs digestion in Chinese medicine. So there's the foundational hormone and reproductive function. There's the liver piece, which is all about how is your body responding to stress, and how well and how smoothly is energy and blood moving through your body, and how well is your liver organ system functioning, how much stress is it under. And then the spleen, we're looking at digestion. So those are some of the common layers that will show up. And again, there can be others looking at specific individuals, but those three are pretty much always involved when there's an issue with hormone health.
Someone might be confused when you say kidneys and spleen, like you never hear of those, but they sometimes have different meanings, don't they?
Right. So I'm not necessarily talking about your Western kidney as you would think of it. I'm talking about specifically the kidney organ system from a Chinese medicine perspective. So if you were to go to a Chinese medicine practitioner and they said, we're working on some things with your liver and we're working on some things with your spleen, that doesn't mean that you would go to a Western doctor and have them, run labs and tell you that you're in liver failure. It's not that at all. It's really looking at what comes before you get to those places. A lot of times Chinese medicine can detect things sooner before you get to the sort of emergent place where Western medicine can come in and help, like a heart attack or, liver failure or things like that. You can catch it sooner because you're looking at these subtle symptoms and what they point to in the body, rather than, waiting for your symptoms to get to a place where they explode.
Yeah, you're never going to hear your doctor saying that you've got a spleen qi deficiency.
Right. Right.
Not going to happen.
Right.
And in terms of Chinese medicine, and it's probably different with everyone, depending on what the hormone imbalances is, what element is out of whack based on symptoms. But is there any general recommendations for diet and nutrition, like foods to minimize, foods to increase, when it comes to hormonal health specifically?
Absolutely. One of the baseline things that I always tell women when they're working on balancing hormones, and this is in direct contradiction to what diet culture would tell us, right? We think of healthy foods, and we think of like, raw salads and, smoothies and acai bowls and things that are generally cold, and actually from a Chinese medicine perspective, actually a lot harder to digest. So like we talked about, there's usually, if not always, a digestive component looking at the spleen and how it's interacting with the other organ systems in the conversation of hormone health. There's usually always that piece. So by addressing digestion, you're affecting downstream how your hormones play out throughout the month. So the recommendation that I always make is to eat and drink more warm and cooked foods as opposed to raw and cold. You can think of cooking as a degree of pre-digestion, and you lightening the load on your digestive organs. So anything you can do to make your digestion go more smoothly, that's going to increase nutrient absorption, which is going to affect your hormones downstream. So that's like the easiest, to me, that's one of the easiest things to change, is to start, not having ice in your water anymore, not drinking iced coffee maybe, and having some type of a warm cooked meal, especially at breakfast. You want to stoke the digestive fire specifically at the beginning of the day to set the tone for the rest of the day. And this is particularly important for women who notice signs of digestive distress, according to Chinese medicine, which would be things like bloating and reflux and constipation, diarrhea. All of these kinds of things can indicate that, of course, your digestion is in distress, and then that's impacting these other organ systems and their ability to do their job in reproductive function.
Yeah, because digestion, I think, is like, is it 40% of your daily energy expenditure? So once
Right. And that's
you,
huge.
yeah, take the pressure and the load off your gut, it has more resources to heal and kind of clean up any damaged cells. But is the warm food and drink just while you're and cooked, just while you're trying to heal, or is it long term as well to stay hormonally healthy long term? Because we hear about like eating seasonally, and
Right.
obviously I'm thinking of people in like really hot countries
Right.
eating soups and stews and all of that, hot tea. Can we eventually work towards eating more salads and things, or is it best to primarily do cooked and warm foods?
So this is where Chinese medicine is so cool because again, you're always in conversation with your environment. So if you live in, let's say, Alaska, where it's cold most of the time, your nutritional, your the thermic nature of your food, whether most of your foods are warming or cooling in their effects on your body, would need to be at a different balance than if you live somewhere where it's warm the majority of the year. So when you're in the acute phase of healing hormones, you're looking more specifically at your internal pattern and your specific individual pattern of disharmony and working to regulate that. So that would be where you'd be focusing more specifically on that warm stuff all the time. And then once you kind of get yourself to a place where you're once again in more harmony with your environment and the world around you, then you can start to take into consideration, okay, well, it's the middle of winter, so I'm going to definitely stay on top of warm and cooked foods so that I can balance out the cold effects of my external environment. And then as the weather starts to warm up, you can start to introduce more salads, more, cold or raw foods. So it's just first getting first getting to the bottom of the issue that's causing symptoms for you, and then you can start to, as your body is able to be in flux with the changes of the seasons and things like that, then you can really start to take that into account. So long term, exactly what you said, you can use you can use your environment to help you inform the choices that you're making with your diet, which is really cool.
So there's no like one diet to stick with forever. It's
Right.
all about
Yeah.
being adaptive.
Right. Humans are dynamic, as is the world around us. And the best, in my opinion, there's no magic bullet diet. There's no one way that works for everyone. And the best thing that you can do is learn how to understand the messages that are coming to you from your body and understand how your external environment is impacting your body, and put those two together and say, okay, because of these factors, it's going to serve me really well in this season of my life to eat this way. And then when the weather changes, or when I've done when I'm noticing that my symptoms of digestive distress are dissipating, then I can start to bring in some other foods. And just being in conversation with your body in that way is really the key, I think.
Yeah, listening to the symptoms as
Right.
messages and communication. But how does one know if hormonally they're in a good place? Because I think so many women think that PMS is normal, or that they're bloated every day and that's just how it is. How do we know when we're actually in a pretty good place and can start to change the diet a little bit? What are some signs, like good signs to be looking for, and maybe some not so good or not normal, but maybe common signs?
Right. So you're exactly right that most women have we're sort of indoctrinated with this belief from a very young age that being a woman is inherently about suffering. You get your period and immediately everyone's like, oh well, now you're gonna be miserable for the next 30-40 years of your life. Have fun with that. So we really have to unlearn that, because that's not the truth at all. What's true is that the women's health is cyclical. And when you're able to be in conversation and work in response to the cyclical changes that are happening within your body and in the world around you throughout the month, your period and your cycle as a whole can really be symptomless. PMS and, like you said, bloating, irritability, mood swings, all of even like hormonal acne that comes around your period. All of these things are signs that the body is struggling a little bit to stay in rhythm with the cycle. So what would be common is, we think that that the PMS we experience, the mood swings, the anxiety, the depression right before, whatever it looks like for you, migraines, headaches, etc. We think that that's normal, but it's just so common. And what would be what would be defined as a normal cycle from a Chinese medicine perspective would be one that is generally symptomless and painless and really just gentle and flowy.
Like easy, doesn't need to have time off work, don't need to be
Right.
reaching for painkillers. A little more effort goes into it, like packing tampons or pads, and maybe you are a little bit more tired than usual, but it shouldn't be an extreme fatigue where you can't
Right.
get out of bed. There
Right.
are symptoms that fluctuate with our mood and our productivity, and we can kind of use that as our superpower. But yeah, it shouldn't be any of that. And I think we're both proof that it can be pretty easy time of the month. It's not the monthly
Absolutely.
curse like we're taught.
Right. And just like you said, there's a degree of shift within the body that is normal. And I think that, for example, like on day one of your period, you might notice like a 10 or 15% decrease in your energy level. And that would be something for you to honor rather than be concerned about. But if it's like a 60, 70, 80% decrease in your energy level, that's where we're getting into symptom territory. So with the body being cyclical, things will change and you can learn what is normal, and it's that degree of symptom change I feel that really can be helpful. If we set the expectation that we're going to have like just this flat line, feeling the same every day, it's not realistic for humans, and specifically not for women,
Mm-hmm.
because of all of the hormonal changes that are happening throughout the month. But the degree of what you experience in terms of, I'm feeling just a little bit fatigued today and I'm going to listen to that and take it easy, versus I, spend 4 days before I get my period wanting to bite everyone's head off. You can see the degree of difference there, where you might where you might want to look at that a little bit deeper if you fit yourself into that second category.
Women are definitely way more cyclical, but men are usually a little bit more simple and static. But even with the seasons and
Right.
with health issues, if they pop up, then they'll still have to change some things. So we're definitely adaptive.
Certainly.
And another thing that there's a lot of myths or misconceptions or misunderstandings about is the hormonal birth control pill, or just hormonal birth control in general. There's a time and a place. I think if someone wants to go on it, that's fine. But I think they should be taught the maybe side effects, things to look out for, ways to support their body whilst taking it. I don't know if you agree with that. What are your thoughts on birth control?
To me, the most important thing is to start getting it so that women have a more of a true informed consent about what they're doing to their bodies and the choice that they're making, because it can't really be a choice if you don't know what you're choosing. If you don't know that when you take this pill every day, it's having, it's blocking the conversation between your brain and your ovaries, and it's affecting your gut health, and it's affecting even your circadian rhythm. It's affecting the way that your body perceives stress. It's affecting your body in so many more ways than just, I can't get pregnant because I'm on the pill. So I agree with you that if a woman chooses that, it absolutely should be a choice, and you should have the opportunity to choose that if it feels like the risk benefit is worth it to you. But unless you actually know what the risk benefits are, how could you ever make that choice in an informed way? And I think, probably this is the same for you. Every single day I see and hear women saying, if I had known what this was doing to me, I never would have chosen it. So that's a pretty clear indicator that there's widespread disinformation, misinformation, and lack of informed consent about hormonal birth control and what it's doing to the body. And to me, that is the root of the issue, because if women don't know what they're doing to their bodies, there's just no, that's just not a good place to be for any of us.
Mm-hmm. And what would you recommend to someone who doesn't want kids now or ever, but doesn't want to get pregnant, but doesn't want to take the pill? Maybe they're on it now, but they want to come off and they're scared. Or maybe they've been considering going on some sort of hormonal birth control, but after listening to this conversation, they realize maybe it's not the best option. What other options do they have?
You have more options than you think is the first thing that I would say. A lot of times, hormonal birth control is what we hear about, what we know about, what's talked about. But there are other options, namely the fertility awareness method is a huge one. And if you were to go, I've heard many different stories from many different women, but if you were to go to your your gynecologist and tell them that you're using that, a common response would be, "Oh, that doesn't work. I'll see you in 3 months when you're pregnant." But the thing about that is, and I keep saying this, it's about being in conversation with your body. So it's a lot easier than you think it would be to understand what your specific signs are for your fertile days. And there's, you can't get pregnant all month. It's there's like a 6-day window ish where you can actually even become pregnant. So if you can learn to identify the signs, and that's what the fertility awareness method is all about. For anyone who might not be familiar, it's about using, there's different methods, but body temperature, cervical mucus, in order to notice what days of the month you're actually fertile, and then using other, maybe just abstaining on those days or using different barrier methods. But yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about hormonal birth control and a lot of misinformation about fertility awareness method and its efficacy, because it's actually quite effective when done appropriately. I tend to recommend, if I have patients who've been on hormonal birth control for a long time and they want to come off of it and they're considering fertility awareness method, I recommend that they begin charting and begin tracking their cycle right away, and give themselves, maybe 3 to 6 months of cushion where they're using some other method of contraception while they're learning to recognize those signs of ovulation and those signs of their fertile window, so that they aren't having an oops before they really understand how to use the method.
Because it can take months for you to start ovulating or start producing the cervical mucus after being on the pill, especially if you've been on it for like 10, 20, 30 years, like some of my clients have. Right. So yeah, it takes a while just for things to, like the brain and the ovaries to start communicating again, and your temperatures and things might be a bit all over the place. And just for the peace of mind, and so that you're not anxious and crazy for those first few months, just let your body do its thing, and then you'll start to notice your collection of patterns and symptoms that your body gives you. But if anyone's interested in learning more about the fertility awareness method, because that's something that I promote as well, I have an episode number 29 with Lisa Hendricks and Jack. It's from a while ago, but really in depth. We talk about those 3 kind of main markers: the cervical mucus, the temperature charting, the cervix position as well. Or there's a book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. It's like the Bible. I think all women should read that, just to know how much wisdom the body has, the female body. But yeah, I agree. I've seen that as well, and I just wish the information was out there on some of the downsides, because you might be told, I was told, like, there's a slight increased risk of certain types of cancer, but your risk factors are very low. But I wasn't told that my hair would start falling out, that I'd get like insane nutrient deficiencies and leaky gut and bacterial overgrowth, so my immune system would be messed up. So if you choose to go on that, maybe you can take some sort of multivitamin or probiotic if that's the right thing for you, but there are different options as well if that's not what you want to go ahead with.
Right.
And supporting your clients or patients coming off birth control, obviously acupuncture if you're in person with them, and focusing, I'm guessing, on gut health, liver detox, just all of the basics, restoring deficiencies.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all of those things. And depending on each person's timeline, we might spend some time working on liver detox and supporting gut health before they come off of the pill, or if they're like, I need to get off it now, then we just address these things in real time. So it depends, but exactly what you said, the liver is affected in a big way, the gut is affected in a big way, and really, the nervous system as a whole, which is why acupuncture is so wonderful for hormone health and for the the transition off of hormonal birth control. So yeah, it's exactly that.
And how amazing would it be if everyone, like your mum, educated themselves, got themselves as healthy as possible before going into pregnancies, and teaching their kids all of this stuff. Not that they need to become an acupuncturist like you, but just like staying healthy, living their best life. And even if you don't want kids for another 10 years, like really start to pay attention to some of this stuff, because you can never start too early. But I always recommend at least 6 months after coming off the pill, ideally 1 to 2 years for that preconception prep, just because the pill really depletes you on many different areas.
Right. Yeah. And that will not only affect your health in that time, but then when you're thinking about conceiving a child, then we're talking about what are those long-term nutrient deficiencies and hormone imbalances going to do, what effects are those going to have on the health of, the child that you're conceiving. And you want, of course, it's easier, I think, for a lot of women to prioritize their children's health even from the moment of conception. So that is often the motivating factors. Like, I of course want to have a healthy baby, so what can I do? And you're exactly right, it can take 6 months, a year, 2 years to really make that really like level the playing field again from that place of deep deficiency as a result of long-term hormonal birth control use.
So if you're going into pregnancy already like 50-60% in terms of vitality, it's just going to drop even more. Maybe your diet's not going to be the best because of food aversions, sickness, health issues during pregnancy. The labor is like the most intense thing the body will ever go through. And then there's the sleepless nights and breastfeeding potentially that's just going to drain you. So at least getting yourself, maybe nobody's perfect, but like at least 70-80% vital before going into that, it's always going to be for the best, not only again for your health short term, but also long term in terms of disease risk and health imbalances in the future.
Right. Yeah. I always use the analogy that, pregnancy is like a marathon. And would you go into a marathon having, being dehydrated and not having eaten well and not having slept and not have, you wouldn't set yourself up for failure in that way for that type of a marathon. So thinking of how you can support yourself through the marathon that pregnancy really is, and how depleting that can be over that 9-month period. Exactly. If you're starting at 50 or 60 going into pregnancy, you're ending, really getting into kind of dangerous territory in terms of your own health. So it's no wonder that in the postpartum season, so many women have issues with things like, postpartum anxiety and depression, and, trouble with breastfeeding and milk production,
Thyroid
and all
issues
of
are a
these
big one.
thyroid issues. Exactly. Yeah. All of these things, because, and it seems to come as a surprise, like, why can't my body do this? Well, if you look back and say, okay, I started pre-pregnancy at, sort of this disadvantage already, and then was depleted for 9 months, ending in a majorly depleting event that is, labor and birth. It's no surprise at all. It's, and I think that's the missing piece of the conversation in the mainstream narrative is, we're not, one, how are we coming into this? And 2, how are we leaving it? And 3, how are we supporting ourselves and nourishing what's lost in the postpartum season?
And for you as a mum, am I right? You're a mother of one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for anyone who's currently pregnant or maybe new mothers, just on like what you've learned and how to stay healthy with the short amount of time, the energy that you do have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Chinese medicine has this concept in the postpartum period called sitting the month, and it's actually like a 30 to 40 day window where when you're newly postpartum, your only job is to nourish baby. People are making you meals, people are doing all of your household chores, and everything is done for you except for recovering and taking care of baby. And so it's not, I certainly wasn't able to do that to that extreme. Like I had to go back to work and, various other things, but I was as conscious as I could possibly be about prioritizing sleep and prioritizing proper nutrition. And there's a great book, The First 40 Days, it's called. And that book, if you are pregnant or are thinking about becoming pregnant and you're wanting to look ahead to how you can nourish yourself postpartum, that's a really beautiful book to get into, so that you can start. The key thing for me was really being gentle with myself, and I don't think we hear enough about that as a whole, but especially in the postpartum season, because it's all about baby, but you're a person too, and you can't take care of baby if you're falling apart. So like I said, prioritizing sleep, prioritizing nutrition, prioritizing my own mental health. I made sure, because I've watched so many women struggle through that time. And don't get me wrong, there are moments of struggle no matter what when you're a new mom, but making sure that those things are at the forefront will make it a lot easier for you.
Yeah, that's really important. And this kind of ties into, I always end the interviews with a few questions for my guests. So the first one was something that you do. I'm not sure how old is your child now?
She's 3.
Okay. So what's something that you do daily now to just keep your hormones in harmony?
I still prioritize sleep above all else, because if you're not sleeping, you can't really do much to outweigh the basics: sleep, nutrition, things like that. You can't out supplement poor sleep. You can't out supplement, eating foods that are causing problems within your body. So to me, that's the most important thing, and that has looked different over the course of the last 3 years, but always prioritizing sleep and always prioritizing the food that I'm putting in my body, because basically everything goes downhill if those two things aren't there. So
Very true.
that is the thing, or the two things, I guess, that I am super vigilant about and that are non-negotiable for me. And they have to be, as a mother, as a business owner, as someone who takes care of other women every day. I need that, and we all need that. And so making that would be my advice. Make that find those couple of things that are your non-negotiables, and be absolutely vigilant about them.
I'm sure it feels selfish in the moment, but it's ultimately more beneficial for you, your career, your family. You can't pour from an empty cup, that old saying, but it's totally true. But with sleep in you, is it more of like, I need this many hours, or is it, I have this many hours, I'm just going to do the most that I can to get into the deep phases of sleep? Have you noticed a difference with those?
I think for me, I know I am not a person that can function on less than 7.5 to 8 hours. Ideally, it's between 7 and 9. It's never less than 7. That's my hard limit. But I always try to shoot for at least 8, and that works really well for me. And also listening, like, for example, last week, every day around like 7:30, like I was coming home from work, getting my daughter to bed at 7:30 and struggling to stay awake. And so when those moments come up, nothing else gets done, and I go to bed, because I know that there's a reason that my body is doing that. Normally I wouldn't go to bed for probably another 2 or 3 hours, but when that comes up, I'm not asking myself, how can I give myself more energy to push through what my body's telling me? I'm saying, you know what? There's a reason for this. I may not completely understand it. Like, it didn't totally make sense to me why I was so tired last week, but you can't always know. You can't know if you've been in contact with a pathogen that your body's trying to fight off, or if your allergies are flared up and your immune system is working on that, or whatever the case might be. So I have that benchmark of somewhere between 7 and 9 hours, but also above that, listening to my body. So if I need 10 hours one night, I'm going to let myself get it. If I need 10 hours for a week, I'm going to let myself get it. And I can't think of anything that would be more important for me and for most people.
It's honestly most people,
right.
Even if they don't think that they have sleep issues, maybe they're tossing and turning all night, they're getting up to go to the bathroom multiple times, they're waking up still tired. That's a sign that you haven't had good quality sleep, even if you've been in bed for 9-10 hours.
Right.
So you can still be sleep deprived.
Yes.
Is there a book that you can recommend on any of the subjects that we've covered today? So either Chinese medicine, acupuncture, or birth control, hormonal health?
Sure. So as I mentioned, the first 40 days is a great one for the postpartum season. I can't think of the author's name off the top of my head for that one. It's going to come to me as soon as we're
I'll link
done
it in
here,
the show notes for anyone who's wondering.
But another one that's great is Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton. That's a really fabulous book. If you're in that place where you're like, okay, I am considering going on hormonal birth control, or I've been on it, or I'm considering coming off of it. Basically, if you have any questions around hormonal birth control and what it might be doing to your body, or if you have a child who is of the age where their doctor might be recommending that, you can get true informed consent from reading that book. So that's one that I would highly recommend.
Great. And then what's your go-to breakfast? So as a busy mum who's working, who's health conscious, what would you typically have if you're a breakfast person?
I am. Breakfast is huge in Chinese medicine. Again, it's that, stoking the digestive fire, which we talked about earlier. So the non-negotiables for me are a warm breakfast and a cooked breakfast. So that might look like oats with, some type of a nut butter or frozen blueberries, or, the condiments, or, the sprinkles in kind of vary, but so, some type of a warm oat congee type dish, or like eggs and sauteed veggies. So I love to do either one of those.
I'm a breakfast person as well. When people say they don't like breakfast food, I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be like a specific breakfast food either. I'm sure like Chinese medicine, they promote like just eating, people have soups and things, or fish
Yes.
or meat in the morning. And that could be one of
Exactly.
the best things that you could do. Definitely over having a bowl of cereal first
Oh
thing.
yeah. Right. I try to prioritize with breakfast, making sure that, there's protein, fat, fiber, all of those components are in there. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, foods that are spleen nourishing, so that'd be warm and cooked, and then whole foods, really.
Yeah. And then very last question before I let you go is where can people find more from you online? I'm not sure if you're working in person with people, if they're in the same state as you or living locally, or I know you do online work as well, so it doesn't really matter if they're not nearby, just so you can plug where they can find you.
Sure. So I hang out on Instagram the most. My handle is at Connected Healing Caitria. I'm on there. I talk on stories just basically every day, and I'm most active on there. I am also on Facebook as well. Um, my my clinic, if you happen to be local, is in southern Wisconsin, and I am taking new patients there. I am about to reopen my online availability for virtual clients as well. I just moved over the last few months. I transitioned to a new clinic space, and so I had to draw the line and close my virtual books for a while so that I could take care of myself while I was making that transition. But I'm ready to open that back up in just a week or two. So that's coming. So Instagram is a great place to start. And then from there, you'll find links to my website and all of my other places where I share information.
Yeah, you make really good reels or TikToks, videos,
Thank
like
you.
short little snippets. I really enjoy them.
Thank
And
you.
it's great to connect with such a like-minded practitioner as well. So I want to thank you again for your time. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so much fun. I was so happy to be here.
Thank you so much.